Welcome back to our calculator building tutorial series. In the previous video, we started our view model, but we still have a couple functions here that we have to define. So if you don't have that code, you can grab it from the description, the link in the description on GitHub below, or you can go back and watch the previous videos in this series and get caught up to date, and you'll probably learn more and understand it a little bit better if you do it that way. So to start off here, we're going to go ahead and start with the absolute easiest one here, which is going to be our clear screen button. So essentially on our screen, what we're displaying is all the data that's in our state right now. So if the user clicks all clear, all that we want to do is set our state equal to calculator state. With one caveat, we don't want to lose the list of equations that we're displaying in our history. So we're going to do equations equals state.equations. And that is all that we need for that one. Now, moving on, if the user were to go ahead and hit the backspace key, well, we're going to need to backspace it from the number that we're currently entering, as well as from the number above in the equation. And depending on where we are in that equation, it could be from it could be from number one, it could be from number two, or from the operator. So to do that, we're just gonna define a couple Boolean variables up here for a when statement. So on number two is going to be equal to state.number2 is not blank. Val on operator is going to be equal to state.operation is not equal null, and val on number one is going to be equal to state.number1 is not blank. So now all we're going to do is take these Boolean variables and plug them into a when statement. So we can do when and when. Now within that when statement on number two, we're going to do state equals state dot copy. And then in there, we'll define all of that in a second. Let me just copy this twice on number two. And then on number one, we'll be at the bottom. And then on operator, we'll be in the middle. So now this state.copy, up top, if we're on number two, what we want to do is we want to cut one number off of the end of number two. So number two equals state dot number two dot drop last one, because we want to drop the last character of that. And then the same thing with the display number equals state dot display number dot drop last one. And then the same thing with our current equation as well. So our current equation equals state dot current equation dot drop last, and then drop last one. And then down here, if we're on the operator, then we want to backspace our operator. So we're going to do operation equals null, and then our current equation equals state dot number one. Or you could also do our right partial equation function that we have down below. Okay, and then we have on number one equals state.copy here. It's going to be the same as number two. We're going to do number one equals state.number1 dot drop last one. And then our display number is going to be equal to state.number1 dot drop last. So the same as above, drop the last one. And then our current equation is going to be equal to state.number1 dot drop last. And actually, you don't want to do your right partial equation here. And the reason you don't want to do it is because we're updating the state right now, and that function is going to be dependent on the state. So what you could do is do the when statement and then do another state.copy down here and do your update your equation down there, but we'll just leave it like this for now. That'll be easier. And then after that, we need to find out if our, essentially if we backspace to 0, so we have nothing left, we don't want nothing displayed on our calculator. Or if we have a negative number and we've backspaced to nothing, we don't want just a negative sign displayed on our calculator either. So if state dot display number equals blank, or if our display number equals just a negative sign, then we're going to want to update our display number to be that 0 that we have displayed, that we always want to have displayed if it's blank. So we'll just clear our screen at that point. Okay, so we've got those two done, our clear screen and our backspace. Now let's look at our decimal and our negate. So first, let's start with the negate. For this one, I'm just going to do a couple Boolean values again. So result from last operation, meaning if I hit equal here, well, we should probably finish our calculator. Let me show you on the old one, the one that I built before. If I have a formula here and I hit equal, and then if I hit negate, I want it to change my display number, but I don't have a number 1 and a number 2. So that's what we're testing here. If the number that we're negating is actually the result from the last operation. So result from last operation equals state dot display number not equal to blank, and state dot number 1 is equal to blank, the empty string. And then we'll do another one for 0 should not be negative. And that's, you don't want to write -0 on your calculator because that's bad math. There is no -0, there's just 0. So state dot display number equals, and then in quotes, if our display number is blank, or if our state dot display number to double or null is equal to 0.0. So then we're gonna have a condition to check if it's equal to 0, and if it is, we're not gonna do a negation on it. And then we'll have one more here for if we should negate the first number or not. And this is going to be equal to state dot number 2 equals, if state dot number 2 equals the blank string, and if state dot number 1 does not equal the blank string, the empty string, then we should be negating the first number here. So now we just need a couple if statements here. If result from last operation, then we're going to do, in here, we want to check if we already have a negative. So val already negative equals state dot display number dot contains. And if it already contains a negative, then we want to drop the negative instead of adding another one. So val negated value equals, if already negative, then we're going to do state dot display number dot drop 1. We want to drop that minus sign from the beginning of it. Else, we're going to do a minus sign plus our state dot display number. And then after that, all we need to do is state equals state dot copy display number equals negated value. So if it's the result from the last operation, like over here, all we need to do is negate that 1, 3 here. So that's all we do there. And then we're going to do else if, and then 0 should not be negative. So if it is 0 there and they're trying to negate a 0, like this, for example, we don't want to put a negative on there, so we don't want to do anything in that case. We just want to return, and then else if, let's see, what next? Else if negate first number. Well, if we're negating the first number, then val already negative. We're going to need to test for that again. State dot number 1 dot contains, if that contains a minus sign, then we're going to do val negated value equals if already negative state dot number dot drop. We're going to drop the first one on that, dot number 1 dot drop the first one. Else we're going to add a negative sign to that again. Actually, this is very similar to up here. We could have just put that in a function instead of typing all of that up twice. So in fact, let's do that. Private fun negate value, and that's going to take in a string. So we'll just call it number, type string, and then we're going to return a string from that as well. So we're going to do val already negative if it contains, instead of our state, if our number now contains a negative sign, then what we're going to do is we're going to do val negated value equals, we're going to do if already negative, then number dot drop 1, else negative sign plus number, and then return negated value. Actually, we really can just do return if. Get rid of that entirely. So now there's our function. So instead of this, what we can do is we can do negate value state dot number 1, and then up here, instead of this, what we can do is we can just do the same thing, negate value state dot display number. Make sure to set that to a variable, val negated value equals, and down here val negated value equals our negate value state dot number 1. So down here state equals state dot copy, and now instead of changing display number, we're going to change number 1 equals negated value. Okay, now else. So we've covered if it's our result from our last operation or if we're negating the first number. The only other option here is that we're negating the second number. So we don't actually need a Boolean to track that. We just do else, and it'll fall into our catch-all else statement here. So what we can do, val negated value equals negate value state dot number 2. And then after that, all we need to do is state equals state dot copy. And then in here, number 2 equals negated value. And oh, actually, our display number also needs to equal that negated value. And up here in our number 1 case as well, display number equals negated value. Okay, and then after that, all we should need is state equals state dot copy current equation equals right partial equation. So because this right partial equation is dependent on the state, we don't want to call that up here where we're changing the state. We want to call that after the fact. So that should complete our negation function. So now the only one we have left is our decimal function. So let's jump in and do that last function here. So add decimal. The only thing that we're going to need to track in here is if it's the first number or the second number, and then if it already has a decimal number on it, because we don't want to add multiple decimal numbers. You don't want 12.256.48. whatever, right? This is not an IP address. This is a number. So val is first number is going to be equal to state.operation equals null. So if our operator is null, then we know we're operating on the first number. So down here, we're just going to do is first number, and then inside of that, we're going to do val number 1 equals. So before we do that, actually, let's make a new function down here. And we'll call this private fun add decimal. We're going to add that to a string that's coming in, and we'll call it a number string, and returning back a string with a decimal, hopefully. So return if number equals the blank string, then we want to return 0.nothing. Else, if number dot contains, if it already contains a decimal point, then all we want to return is the number itself. And then else, if that number, if it's not blank and it doesn't contain a decimal point, then we want to add a decimal point to it. So the way we do that is $number and then put a dot. So that should be, oh, there we go. Return, and then that should return whatever we need here. So now val number 1 equals add decimal state dot number 1, and then after that, all we can do is state equals state dot copy number 1 equals number 1, and then display number also equals number 1, and then else. So if it's not the first number, then it's going to be our second number. So val number 2 equals add decimal state dot number 2, and then state equals state dot copy number 2 equals number 2. Display number also equals number 2. So now we have everything updated. We just need to update our equation as well. So down here we'll do one more state equals state.copy. Current equation equals right partial equation. And there you go. So now if we build this calculator app and run it, that should be totally good. So if we do 9.3 plus 3.2, it's giving us what we want. 96 minus 3. Oh, we want a backspace. Oh, that backspace didn't work. We'll have to go back and look at that. Let's see, does our clear work? Yes, our clear does work. Let's see, 8, 9, backspace. It worked there. Okay, so the backspace doesn't work on our second number. Let's go back and look at why that doesn't work. So I found the issue. It's coming from right here. We definitely don't want to clear the screen here. If our number 1 is blank, then we want to clear the screen. But if number 2 is not blank, then that's not the right behavior that we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to do if state.number1 does not equal blank, and state.number1 does not equal negative, which was a condition that we're checking for above, then we're going to let's move that clear screen down to an else statement down here. So if state number 1 is not empty or just a negative, then all we're going to do is we're going to do state equals state.copy. And in here, we're going to pass a display number, state.number1. And then our number 2, we're going to set equal to blank. And then after all of this, down at the bottom, we're going to do state equals state.copy. And our current equation is going to be equal to right partial equation. Now that should be what we need. 6.3 plus 6.2. So if we hit backspace now, you can see it just takes off of the end. Our clear button is working as well. Our negation is working. So this now is everything that we need for our calculator. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, this short little tutorial series. You can get all of the code from this video and all the previous videos on GitHub. And let me know what you think down in the comments below.